Hey, welcome back to Cam and Joe. This is episode 6, and today we're going to be talking about real estate, different types of financing, and some kind of lesser known options you can do to make money and buy real estate.
Getting
So,
stacks and getting buildings.
how are you, Joe? How's your day going?
Good. My mouth is really dry. I'm going to try to chew this piece of gum for like 30 seconds. Dude, this is funny. Total side note, I apologize. Before I landed my most recent job, I interviewed for a job, and in like the second round, I was chewing gum, and I like got disqualified from the interview. That was like one of the reasons.
Oh my
So now I'm
gosh.
always like really conscious of it.
Did you know that you had the gum in, or you just didn't even realize?
So like it was in the summer, and it was like really hot and dry in my house, and so my mouth was like, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have that like weird old person sticky mouth. So I thought I was like doing a good thing, but it is rude to just be chomping on gum in like a Skype interview. Like, it wasn't really like,
I'm not gonna lie. If I was the one interviewing you or chewing gum, I'd be like, "What the fuck? This is so
Yeah,
unprofessional."
yeah, no, I don't blame them, because the recruiter was cool and she like was pulling for me, but she goes, "Were you chewing gum in the last interview?" And I was like, "Oh, I was." Anyway, so I'm actually really excited about this topic because I've been flirting with getting into real estate from an passive income standpoint, but I haven't jumped in. So I've been really looking forward to this episode.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I know when we first started talking, when we were hired together, I think real estate was kind of the first thing we started talking about.
Yeah, you had, you had, how many properties did you have? You had 3 at the time?
Yeah, so we had 3, but since going through divorce, we sold 2 of those properties. So,
But I think what I found so fascinating was you were really knowledgeable on like financing, and you had one of your buildings. No, all 3 of your properties were in different states, which I found even more interesting. So yeah, I think that was what kind of piqued my interest. Like, this person knows a lot about this.
and so with Sabrina, she's the one who has her license active in Arizona. She's working on getting her Washington one, but we would kind of learn stuff together. But for the most part, she was kind of the expert in diving deep into these topics. So a lot of the information I know is like through her or things that she's learned sharing. I did have an active real estate license for 2 years, then it was inactive for 2, and it just recently expired because I didn't extend it because I don't live in Arizona anymore, and I'm like, I don't see the point of paying the fees again.
Are you going to renew it when you get back into real estate investing? Like, how? Let me ask this.
It's only good for Arizona, so I would have to buy and sell in Arizona to be able to use it.
So you'd have to redo the
for
whole
each
test
state.
in Washington.
Yeah, and at this
Is
point,
it valuable? Like, there's obviously probably majority of people listening to this are not realtors. Is it worth it, and how worth it to have that if you're going to get into real estate investing?
that's a really good question. I honestly think if you're going to invest, it depends. Like if you're not that concerned about it and you're doing high volume, then you definitely want like professionals in the area. If you're doing multiple areas, if you're just going to do one area you know really well and you grew up there or whatever, like I think it would be beneficial. Not to mention it's, the market fluctuates, but you're going to usually save 2 to 3% on whatever the price because you're going to get that back in commission if you represent yourself. So like our first house that we bought in Arizona, we waited until like we went through and got our license together at the same time until it was finished. And we ended up getting a 3% commission on our own place that we bought.
Oh, okay.
So the place was $291 when we purchased it. But let's just say it was $300,000 to make the math easy. It was basically $9,000 we got back in commission.
So okay. I'm sure we'll get into how the depths of that, because I'm kind of just jumping in here. But so I think it's essentially if someone wanted to do real estate as like a full-time investment strategy, it does seem like it would be valuable to get a license.
Because you can also like play tax games when you get that too, because depending on what your regular income is, if you're offsetting some of that income into a different like job, you can write off more things for it, right? If you're a real estate agent, you can add additional things you can write off because you're self-employed.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, most people in real estate,
car maintenance, office.
Yeah. They're already writing those stuff off. Most of them have businesses so they can do write-offs. But anytime you travel to your properties to look at them or even look to purchase properties, you can write all that stuff off. But anyway, that's a super side tangent.
Yeah.
There are a lot of fees that you have to pay, and they just tell you as a realtor, like, oh, don't worry about it. Just close your first deal and it'll pay for all these fees, which is kind of bullshit because a lot of it they say is not mandatory, but it's mandatory. Like to become a member of the National Association of Realtors, which they say is not mandatory, but in order to hang your license at a brokerage, you have to be a member. So that's how your license becomes inactive. So I technically was a real estate agent, but I couldn't hang my license at a brokerage because I wasn't going to pay the like $900 a year annual fee. Didn't make sense for both of us to keep paying that under one roof. There's no like you're married so you can pay one fee. No, we both had to be paying double fees. So that was part of why I didn't continue to extend mine. But anyway, so we helped people buy and sell. Sabrina moved and helping investors a lot, and then we bought our own property. So by no means experts in any ways, but I just want to share the information and knowledge and kind of like do's and don'ts that we've learned since then, and maybe share some of the creative financing that people wouldn't be aware of.
Yeah. Okay. So financing, what do you think the number one vehicle is if someone was wanting to get into this?
So the most common thing people do, and probably the easiest would be is like buy a property for yourself and you live in it, for a year or a couple of years, and then move and buy another property and then rent out the one you were living in.
Okay. So I'm moving in July. I would buy a new house or buy new to me, live there for a while, and when I'm ready to upgrade, instead of selling that house, I essentially just own it, and now I have a passive income stream by renting it to a family or a dude or something.
Correct. And you'll run into I wouldn't say problems, but when you go to get a loan on the second one, the lenders are going to want to see basically like a contract that you have an agreement with who's going to rent your property. So then they'll be able to count that as income towards your debt to income ratio. And that would essentially cancel out what your mortgage is. So when you go and get approved for another loan, so let's say you had the house was $100,000 that you own. That's the value. If you go to buy another $100,000 house, let's say your income is only enough to be approved for like $150,000. They're not going to approve you to have two mortgages at once on their own. But if you're able to show like, hey, these people signed a lease, here's the lease, this is the rent amount. Let's say the rent is going to be enough to cover the mortgage. So they won't give you dollar for dollar. Let's say you're renting it for $1,000. They won't give you $1,000 of income towards it. They'll give you 75%. So it would let you count $750 a month towards your mortgage. So ideally, the 75% is higher than your mortgage. So it would show on paper when they do debt to income ratio that like you don't owe anything. In fact, the house is actually profitable for you now and adds to your income, doesn't deduct from it.
And would you go to back to your same lender? Like if I got a loan from PNC, I would go, hey, my loan guy at PNC, here's the deal? Or would you be able to do that with any lender? Like a different mortgage? You
can do it with any lender. I mean, I've definitely shop around to find the best rate you can get if you're going to do that. Obviously, if you're getting the same loans through the same lender over and over again, they're already like established. You don't have to keep, I guess, like explaining to them because not all lenders feel comfortable doing those kind of things, but there's so many out there. It doesn't matter. You just go to find one. And especially if you're working with like, not any real estate agents will be able to help you, an investor real estate agent, like somebody who's used to investing, or find an agent who has their own properties that they invest in. Those are the people who are good because they've been doing it and they know.
That's got to be such a hack, is finding a investment-minded realtor who you're essentially almost partnering with in a way.
Exactly. And especially depending on what you're looking at buying. If you want to get into multifamilies, like 1 to 4 units, small multis, I mean, find someone who specializes in that, and even somebody who owns some themselves, because they're so much more knowledgeable and can help you, especially when you're first starting. A really good resource to go to is a website. It's called biggerpockets.com.
BiggerPockets is awesome.
It's free. They have a YouTube channel as well. And I think they post like 2 videos a day. of just
Damn.
other or other investors of all different walks of life and backgrounds who like their stories, how they did it. It's a great resource to like anyone, and no matter what state you're in, you'll find people who are on Bigger Pockets in that state, and they're more than happy to be like, hey, this is an agent I found that's really specialized in this that helped me with that, or like, oh, you need a lender who's like comfortable doing these types of loans, like try this person. So you could spend hours and hours, like thousands of hours on that website consuming information and diving deep into each one of these, I guess, like unique ways of financing. So
that is where you turned me on to that when you and I first met last year, and the Burr method I was like, oh, that's so cool. Mm-hmm. And I actually just wrote an article on GetRichRetire.com plug about multifamily homes. So I think you turned me on to this, but it was also a Bigger Pockets thing I looked into. You can get up to a 4-unit multifamily home with a first-time buyer loan.
Yep, through FHA.
FHA, which is insane because you can essentially get, let's call it a $500K property for like 15 grand, which is absolutely bananas. I mean, I think the rates are a little higher now, but even if let's call it 25 grand. And so you live in it for a year, and essentially if your mortgage, I did the math, it was like about $4,000. So you charge all of your renters $1,500, and it covers your mortgage and then makes you like a few $100 cash flow. Then after the year is over, you move out. So you and Sabrina were married at the time. You know, I have a partner, Abby. So we do that once, we do it twice. And now I have 2 freaking buildings that I essentially got for 50 grand, $1 million in real estate that's generating, you know, before, you know, taxes and all that stuff, $8,000. It's, what would that be? Whatever, let's call it 8 grand. I mean, it's a freaking, unfortunately, she doesn't want to do that. She wants to go like buy a big house in Texas. Yeah, which is, I mean, it'll be nice. But like, for anyone who's open to that, that's got to be one of the best freaking things you can possibly do to like jumpstart your real estate holding passive income.
100%. So what you're referring to, a lot of people call it house hacking. So you can do that with a single family home as well too. Like a lot of people start that way if they're like not married and don't have kids. It's the easiest way to go. You can do multifamily, or you could do a single family home and rent out the rooms to like, you know, other people your age or whatever, right? So let's say your mortgage is like $1,500 a month. You have 4 bedrooms, just like you said. You live in one and you rent the other 3 out for $500 each. I mean, these are just examples. Obviously, you got to rent for what the market is in your area, you know, but that's an opportunity. Even if you're not making extra money, if your mortgage is being covered and you don't have to pay for it, like that's how you can continue to save money to buy the next property.
Yeah, even if you're not making money, if you break even, you are literally paying for an asset that essentially, I mean, this is the only way to predict this is the past is the best predictor of the future. We don't know if like a meteor is going to hit the earth, but real estate at the end of the day, at the end of your life, will more than likely have gained value.
Oh yeah. And even if so historically over time, real estate has increased in value. Even if that was not the case, if you hold the properties long enough, let's say you have 30-year mortgages on them, after 30 years, if you didn't make extra payments, other people paid your mortgages off.
Yeah, how cool is that?
Now you don't owe that mortgage. So let's say your payment was $1,500 and you're still renting it out. Now you're getting $1,500 in your pocket. And that's how you
or you pull equity out and buy more properties. Like there's so much shit you can do. Dude,
so many options.
My grandparents, this is obviously like we are the generation that like didn't get to catch the insane like uptick in the value of things, except crypto, I guess. But they bought their house for like 30 grand and they sold it for like $600,000. I mean, it's like they lived there for like 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. But that's retirement. I mean, that's a pretty fat ROI right there, dude.
Yeah, you can take that money and sell that house, take that money, put it into some type of an investment or like mutual fund or whatever. It's going to pay you like 6 or 8%, and that's your retirement right there, right? And then you go live somewhere and pay rent or whatever.
Yeah, they downsized, and my grandpa was really conservative, and he. When you're like really old and you just want the money to like beat inflation, essentially, they put it in like a a low fee income fund or a mutual fund, so they just could draw down on it.
Yeah, you'll go out and buy a Corvette Z06.
Oh man,
And drive
I feel like you gotta buy one
midlife
stupid
crisis.
thing. When you get like a big chunk of money, you gotta buy like one dumb thing. Although those new vets are sick, dude. Oh my god,
Yeah,
they look like a Lambo and
a Ferrari had a baby. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, every time I see them, I'm like, there's an orange one in my neighborhood, and I'm always like, is that a McLaren? Like, oh, it's freaking cool.
Yeah, the same way when I do a double take.
Always, every time. My cousin's now husband won like a small lottery when he was in college. Small, maybe it was like, I don't know, $100,000 or something. Still really cool. And he did the house hack. He bought a house, and it's perfect. You're in college, your buddies, you're wanting roommates anyways. And so he's been like house hacking since he was like 21.
Nice.
Yeah, smart kid. He's a really smart kid.
Yeah, it's a really great option. What you were talking about with the multifamily, you can get, so normally if you were to buy an investment property, they want 20 to 25% down. Most lenders want 25% down of the purchase price. So it's a lot of money. So that's a huge barrier of entry for a lot of people, to where they're like, hey, if I'm buying a $300,000 home or, $500,000 multifamily, like I don't have $150,000 or whatever the price is going to be. Like, so how can I do that? Well, there's ways around that. So you can do FHA. They only require 3.5% down. A conventional,
your credit only needs to be like a FICO 575 or something.
Lower credit score. So to give you an idea real quick, conventional is 5% is the minimum you can put down, up to any amount you want. Like, I don't know, 100% you can buy cash. But anything under 20%, you have to pay PMI, which is the property mortgage insurance. That's usually like 1 or 2% of the value of the home, is like a few $100s extra each month they have to pay until your equity gets over 20%. With FHA, 3.5%, you do have to pay the PMI, but the PMI never comes off the loan. Even if your equity was 50%, the PMI still stays on there. So a way around that is, once you hit 20% equity, whether that's from paying it down or the value increases, you just refinance out of an FHA loan into a conventional loan. And if you already have 20% equity, you don't have to pay PMI, and most banks are way comfortable like switching you over because you already have a ton of equity. So they're willing
and
to
they'll just draw it out again,
on.
And then you lower your payment too.
Yeah. Yeah, they're more than happy to be like, sure, you want to put another 30-year loan on your place? Like, yeah, we'll do that.
Would you suggest that, or would you suggest trying to keep the payment the same and ending the loan earlier?
Depends what your goal is. So that's another thing you got to find out. Like, are you in a position to where you want to go like one property a year? Because with FHA, you got to live on the property for 12 months. After that, you can move out, keep that property. Like you said, you're already renting out, say, as a multifamily, 3 of the units. Now you rent out the 4th. When you leave, you go and buy another multifamily and you live in that one. So you can keep doing that with very little. Again, you only need 3.5% down to keep doing that over and over again. So is your goal just like, hey, I'll get a couple of those, and in that situation, I have 8 units I can rent out. If I know once they're paid off, each one's cash flowing me, let's say $1,000 to make it easy math, that's $8,000 a month that you would have for retirement. Obviously, you have to put like certain percentages aside for repair costs and things like that. It's a good idea.
What do you suggest for that?
I forget the exact breakdown. I think it's 5% for maintenance, like long-term maintenance, say like your major thing breaks, like an appliance or water heater, 5% towards vacancy, and I think it's then 10% towards I don't remember. Maybe it's 15% total, like 5, 5, and 5. Anyway, that stuff's on bigger pockets.
But like give yourself a pad if there's
definitely don't
catastrophic
send all your cash somewhere else.
Yeah.
Like in our Alabama property that we have as a rental, it's a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 1,200 square feet. It's the all-in mortgage, taxes, everything's about $470 a month, and we rent it for $1,200 a month.
Damn, bro.
And we pay the property manager 10%, so that's $120. So it's roughly $600. So half a month covers all the fees, and then we put roughly like 10% aside each month for like repair costs and things that come up. So we're pocketing all the rest.
Is this just some rando, or is it like a company that Like just has
It's
people that do that shit.
It's an individual that we use there that had like a smaller portfolio and was willing to take on this amount and was knowledgeable in the area. So we did it.
That was like their business was like, I'll manage.
Yeah, they're an individual
properties.
that they're a property manager and they work for themselves and have their own business.
Cool.
But they don't manage a ton of properties because if you get too many, then it's like a business. We wanted somebody who's more hands-on. And
was it worth it for them though? That seems like a really small amount of money for someone like.
Well, if you're if you're managing 20 properties, I mean that's like
okay, so they're making like good money, yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like how many hours did they need to be involved with your property per week?
Well, initially when they finding someone that's more labor intensive. So in this particular area in Georgia, Alabama, a lot of places will charge you like half the first month's rent as basically like a fee to get someone into the unit. Some places charge you a whole month's rent. We aren't fucking doing that.
Right.
I don't think so. But anyway, so we strategically picked near like Fort Benning, which, we wanted to hopefully get a soldier in there because, they don't get affected by like COVID or downturns in the economy. Like,
and their freaking rent is paid by the good old government of the USA. So that's not even like income that they have to partition for that. It's like going straight to you.
So they get stipends for housing. And I think in that area, depending on the rank, I think the guy that's in there based on his ranks get like $1,300 a month towards his rent. So he's still making like $100. So he doesn't care the rent is that. And we renovated the inside of the place. It's nice. I think we paid like $21,000 when we bought it. That was a 25% down. And then we put like another $10,000 into renovating it, cleaning it up. But to give you an idea, so unexpected costs initially, that's why you put money aside, is the AC went out basically, right? Like summer came around and started getting hot. It's humid down there. Ran it, and the thing just crapped out. So that was, I think, almost $4,000 to replace the unit. But I mean, if you're saving 10% for a couple of years, yeah. So now it's like comes with a 10 or 15-year warranty. Like we don't have to worry about it anytime. So,
dude, I got a hack for that.
Costs like that come up, that you should put money aside each month for.
So this guy I knew, and I lived in Florida. Like everyone in Florida is a little. I don't want to use the word sketchy, but they're creative with money-making schemes. Mm-hmm. And so this kid, he's a super nice kid. He was like a professional drug dealer, but also had like 1,000 side hustles. He ran like a business where, when you go to the bathroom and there's like a guy there who like gives you a towel and like gum or like a cigarette. Mm-hmm. He like owned a business that did that, cash business, right? So good for like, I don't know, laundering money, I guess. I don't know if he was doing any illegal stuff, but that's me just trying to add color to it. But anyway, he owned a house and the AC went out and it was going to be like really expensive, like $8,000 to fix, which is like an amount he didn't want to pay. So he created a LLC and incorporated an air conditioning repair company. And instead of paying another company to like do the shit, he just like he hired a guy to do the job and was able to like source the parts and then like save on labor or something and like paid like 30% of the price, let's say. It was like so genius. And I don't know, a very creative solution to like paying for something like that.
I like it. This is not financial advice. Don't do what Joe just said. If you want to do it, do that at your own risk.
Right. I have no legal background and a minimal business background and borderline fake college degree. Okay, that is awesome, by the way, how you guys hooked that up. That's a sick deal.
And the thing with that, in that area, like the houses don't appreciate. So you're not going to make, like a big market to where the homes will increase in value, like a couple $100,000. It doesn't happen there. But, it's a place where it's a steady, stable market as long as the base is there, which, that's kind of a major training base that's in the U.S. And home to a lot of other things specifically there. So I don't think that's something you got to be cautious of if you're going to be around military bases. If that base shuts down, is that the only thing providing jobs and keeping people in the area? Because if you own multiple properties and that happens, it could be like any major company, right? Like imagine if you had rentals around all the car companies in Detroit when they all shut their doors.
Oh, God.
Like I mean, you can buy homes in Detroit now for what, like $100, and then you just got to pay like the back property taxes and stuff. So
yeah, is the market rebounding there at all? I'm so curious.
I don't know. There's so many things in deciding where to, like, again, we could have a million shows about this, but I'll just try to stay on topic as far as like financing options. So we talked about FHA and about conventional. So another one, obviously there's VA out there, but if you're not a veteran, like you're not eligible for that. But there is USDA, which is the United States Department of Agriculture. They do home loans also, and it's very similar to a VA.
Wait, the Department of Ag?
Yes, where you put zero money down. You can also have a FICO score of 640 is the minimum to qualify. So this is fairly low FICO score to qualify. You do have PMI that comes with it, which is normal. The rates are usually lower too, like similar to VA rates on the loan. So you can get better interest rates than you would for like conventional or FHA. The only catch is there's geographical restrictions. The properties have to be considered like out in like not farmland, but I forget the term you would describe. Like they can't be in the cities. So you can go on their website and they'll have a map, and you can either search by zip code or you can just search by map. To give you an idea, like where I live near Seattle, obviously can't buy a home like Seattle, Tacoma, any of the suburb cities around. Those areas are restricted. But as soon as you start going like, I don't know, 20 minutes outside any of those cities where it starts becoming more like spaced out wilderness farmland area, all that area qualifies. So the point of this, I guess, fund or whatever that they have available to do this was to try to like encourage people to live out in these areas. I think to help, farmers and things like that are selling their properties, so they don't like, get crushed on the value, right? Because people will be like, I don't want to live all the way out there. So another opportunity for you to be able to buy a property, you do have to live in it. It does have to be your primary residence. It can't be like an income producing property. So if it has like active farm on it or something like that can generate revenue, then it doesn't qualify. But you can buy a home on acreage or whatever out there. So I think that's a good way for people who are looking to get started. I don't know if it has the same thing. If you live there 12 months after that, you can move out and you could like rent it or Airbnb or whatever. I don't know, but the USDA is another option. You might be surprised. It's like huge. Like 90% of the United States qualifies to be USDA because it's like all the
what? Area. So how is there like a minimum mileage outside of a major?
I don't
city?
think it's set in stone. Like you just have to go on their website. So I would imagine if you're in like east of the Rockies and a lot of that area, like Dakotas, Wyoming, Utah, Montana, all the way down to New Mexico, I would imagine like you don't have to be very far outside of like a main population to be considered that. It's probably like if you're outside of the main county of that city.
There's a map.
Yeah,
Zero down loan.
You can go click on the map and you can search the zip code of the home it's in if you're interested, or you can just search around the map and it'll show you like areas that are qualified and not. So that's also a cool option.
By the way, I was quickly jumped on Zillow after you mentioned Detroit. Mm-hmm. Dude, like I have no desire to live in Detroit, so it's irrelevant, but the houses, they're like giving them away.
Yeah, because they want like people to pay property taxes.
Yeah, my God, dude.
And then you got to fix the houses up. Most of them are in shambles, so.
Yeah, the ones that are like dirt cheap, like there's like a 14 unit property for 30 grand. But like if you go into the pictures, it's rough. It's very rough.
If you buy in the area and fix it up, like, is there even a rental market there? Like, would you even be able to find? If there's no jobs there,
if you were like committed to essentially bringing in, like, there was this woman, I forget her name, but in Janesville, Wisconsin, this lady, like, essentially like rehabbed this like rinky-dink little town and like pimped out the downtown, brought in these like cool restaurants and bars and like activities and like built all these real estate developments, like really nice ones. And it's cheap because Wisconsin's just not expensive in general. Mm-hmm. But she probably dumped, an 8-digit figure of money in before but she could afford it. She was like a billionaire. So if you had cash like that, like you could jump in and like blow up Detroit in a good way, but no one wants to for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want to research the area, and if you live there and you're from there and you're investing in your own area, then I mean, I feel like you'd have a good understanding of the history and like where things are going.
Yeah, you can take advantage then if you live in an area that kind of got, beat up for whatever reason. Like they obviously had a lot of problems, but if you know that like this neighborhood is still like decent and populated and you can take advantage of it because you're local, totally.
And when we bought in Alabama, it's right on the border across from Georgia, so it's like 15 minutes from the base. I was stationed there for 3 years, so.
Oh, so you knew the area.
I felt comfortable
you knew
with
like the hot spots. Okay.
The areas, and even though it had been many years since I was there, we found a realtor in the area after screening a couple that we liked, and then he provided some recommendations of like a lender. And we also, on our own, looked up like a bunch of property managers. And then he had his recommendation. We ended up using his person because she answered all our questions thoroughly. Like BiggerPockets and they're a good resource too. Like those are people who've been through and they'll literally be like, hey, these are questions you should ask.
Oh, like you actually had someone help you from BiggerPockets? Like you guys had like a coach or something?
No. So we ordered a book off there that was through David wrote, because his specializes in like renting out of state, like long distance, and talks about like things you should look for when building a team. So you'll need a real estate agent, a lender, and a property manager, and probably a contractor if you need to do work. So we found the real estate agent first, which they recommend because that person usually has recommendations of all those other people that they work with on a regular basis.
They're like a fixture of the local community, essentially. They're
so you
like
find
the
your local
catalyst.
expert.
Yeah,
but you still got to do your due diligence and like interview people. So he made his recommendations, and we did interview those people, but we also like interviewed some people on our own to find out, because you just don't want to go with the first person, because what if your agent actually turns out to be like a bum or garbage?
That's a good point.
Then the people they recommended, like you're totally hosed. And obviously there's no guarantee that couldn't happen anyway, but like if you ask people these questions of like, what would you do in this situation with a tenant? Like, how do you handle these? What is your process for evictions? These sort of things. You can pretty much know like someone who's bullshitting you and someone who's being honest. And you use your gut and your knowledge of research you've done and pick someone you think's the best. So we really like our property manager down there. She's like no BS and like knew the law really well. And the law for eviction is very different between Georgia and Alabama, even though they're like right there on the border type of thing. So it's been a good investment for us. Another thing is like soldiers usually do 3-year contract or time that they're at a base.
So do you lock people in for long leases?
We've just been doing 1 year, but he just moved there when he signed. So we knew he's going to be there for at least 3 years if he doesn't extend. So
why do real estate owners raise their rent every year? Like, I don't know the ins and outs, but that seems bogus.
Well, I mean, with inflation, it's just part of it, right? Because your property taxes usually increase each year. So a lot of times it's not that they're like trying to be greedy and gouge you. It's just that they're covering their cost.
So they will raise it so if I'm an ethical renter, I will raise it in equal measure to whatever the percentage uptick in my expenses are, essentially.
Yeah.
So if my property tax goes up 5%, I add 5% on.
Because prices for everything go up usually on average every year with inflation, right? Like 3%. So it makes sense that rents should go up 3% also. Because any repair costs you have and all those things, they're going to cost more this year than they did the previous year.
Man.
So that's an investment and an owner, like you're like, I'm not going to keep like eating those costs out of pocket type of thing. Obviously there's scum landlords and people who price gouge. Like we don't do any of that stuff. We've kept him, I think we raised after the first year, the lease was like $20 or $30 more each, like for the following 1 year lease per month. And then he had like met a girlfriend or something like that. And she had a dog and it was like, hey, we want the dog to live here. Is that cool? And it was like, yeah, you can do the dog. Like we'll just tack on another like $25.
Because obviously there'll be some cleaning involved.
Yeah, for the cleaning. And then, we also want like an additional like $300 deposit for the pet.
My
those
dad used to
things if you rent anywhere, like
deposit.
you're going to pay that stuff. And that's not refundable.
Do you give back the dog deposit? Because I know a lot of places do not.
No, we're not doing it for the pet one just because we know we're going to have steam clean. And it's 2 dogs and they're like, I don't know, German Shepherds or some huge dogs.
Yeah, they get stanky.
A lot of places won't accept those kind of things, and we have laminate flooring in there that's not going to scratch from the dogs running around and stuff like that. So again, that's another thing to where it's like we're being fair, compromising with them, right? Like, hey, we're willing to take your ginormous dogs who will probably, you know, have some wear and tear, and they know there's not a lot of options they can go with those big dogs. So it's like, yeah, we'll do it, you know, pay a little extra more to help cover some of the cost to clean up and maybe repair some of the damage. And then they're like, yeah, cool, no big deal. So I think that's fair to where you're not being like, hey, $200 more a month, right? Like,
yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
So those are those ones. Another one is a wraparound mortgage. I don't know if you ever heard that term before.
I've heard of the term, but I have no idea what it is.
So basically, like, the mortgage has to be set up this way already with the seller to where it's can be assumable, but it just means that, like, say you own a house and maybe you've lived there 15 years and there's like 15 years left on your mortgage. You agree to sell the house to me and I take over your mortgage, basically is what it means. So I would get like your same rate and everything like that. And then you get cashed out like the value of the home that's already been paid off. So,
wait, what was the second part? I'm trying to conceptualize it.
So when you leave the house, like the benefit as the seller of like why you would want to agree to that, I guess, is like you get cashed out. I believe that's how it works for the amount that you've already paid off on the house. So if the house is, if you still owe like $150,000 on the house, but the house is worth $300,000, like you should get cashed out on that. And then, no, wait a minute. I think I'm getting this confused on this part, but you assume the loan and continue making the payments. And then I think you have to pay like a lump sum deposit basically to the seller. So the seller gets to walk away from the house and they get like your $30,000 deposit as their benefit, not the value of the house. And the bank's cool because, you know, the loan is still getting paid. It's an advantage for you, like in this situation where interest rates have climbed a lot, you could possibly take over a mortgage with interest rates like 3% already.
And then the seller just cashes out their portion paid on the main principal plus whatever profit.
I don't think they cash out any of that. I think their benefit is like there's probably not equity in the house that they've earned. Or like say the Alabama house, for instance, there's no equity. The house just stays the same price, basically fluctuates like a few $100s over a 10-year period.
So it wouldn't matter. And then you can just like walk away and you've used it as a passive income vehicle.
You get to walk away and then the buyer is paying you a deposit. So like if you had to pay the bank 20% when you do your loan, you're basically like would be paying them like a 20% down payment.
What's the benefit? To the seller. It seems so in a situation.
If you buy your house for,
but don't you want to build equity regardless so you can use it to like borrow against?
Yeah, but if your equity is being built not from the value of the house increasing, only from paying down the loan, the first 10 years of your loan like is mostly interest. So you're not really paying that much of the loan down. And the average person only lives in their house for 7 years.
Okay.
So in those situations, it could be a way for someone, because the alternative would be a new person comes in and buys the house. Let's say the house is worth, let's say you paid $100,000 for the house, and then 5 years later, it's worth $105,000, right? And you've maybe paid down 5,000 of it. So someone pays $105,000, it's worth 95 what you owe. So there's $10,000 left over after you pay the loan off, right? But you also still have to pay the real estate fees, which in most situations is 6%. So at $105,000, that's a little over $6,000 right there. So you're left with what, like $3,000 and change. But if someone just comes over and assumes your loan, you still have to pay the real estate fees. But if they're going to pay you, 20% down payment, well, now your amount is going to be $20,000 instead of $10,000. So your piece of the pie you can walk away with after you pay off the loan, and the real estate fees is going to be bigger. But in this situation, you don't have to pay off the loan. The other person's just assuming it. So your only out-of-pocket cost would be the real estate fees.
Okay, that makes sense.
So instead of walking away with like $3,500, you walk away with like $13,500.
Okay, so that makes sense.
So in that situation, it's like you didn't earn any value. It's a way for you to get out of your loan and walk away with some cash. And the buyer gets the advantage of like, hey, mortgage rates are 6%. Yours is 3% currently. I can just slide right in and keep paying that.
Oh, so that's even an incentive as someone who knows they're going to sell.
Yeah, and the bank doesn't care because the original loan is still getting paid. I mean, they care. They want someone to pay high interest rates and all that. But if it's assumable, like you can exercise that option as a seller and the new person can come over and do it. And then you're off the loan like free and clear to go on and get another loan or whatever you want.
That's so slick.
So that is wraparound mortgage is that term. And then there's seller financing. So seller financing is basically where the house is paid off. I guess they could also have a mortgage still on it, where it gets a little trickier because if you still have a mortgage and you're agreeing to the terms with the new buyer, it's basically like a rent to own type of situation, I guess is what that would be. But anyway, let's say the house is paid off. Say you have a house that's worth $100,000. It's paid off, and I come to you to buy it. But say maybe my credit sucks, right? Like no one will approve me for a loan, no banks, because I had whatever happened in the past. And you're like, hey, I'm willing to take on the risk. Like I'll sell you my house. We're going to draw up a contract. The home's worth $100,000. I want a 10% down payment, and I'm going to charge you 5% is the interest rate. So you would basically be the bank as the seller, but because I'm unable as a buyer to get approved through the bank, you find someone who's willing to basically like take that burden and risk on themselves. And as the seller, if I don't like make the payments to you, you can also foreclose just like a bank does, and you get the property back. So there's risk and reward on both sides for that to happen. And the advantage as the seller is you'll get a chunk of money, right, to walk away from the property of whatever down payment you agree to. But then you're also getting passive income each month because the house is paid off. You don't owe anything on it. And now you have someone that's basically like paying you rent, except for those are their mortgage payments to you. So whatever terms you agree to, and usually seller financing is short. It's not 30 years. It's usually like a 5-year or 10-year loan. So you're basically like getting a little chunk to walk away, and then you get monthly payments. So it's basically like turning it into a rental property, except for when it reach the expiration of whatever the contract is, the person gets the house. But if they fail to make a payment, then you get the house back, and you still got to keep their down payment, and same shit that a bank would do to you. So again,
these USDA loans, by the way, I'm just like goobering around.
They're awesome. I totally want to get one.
I'm looking at properties
because there's cool spots around here that are like a little bit out of the ways, but nice. And I'm like, hell yeah, I would live there. A couple acres.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's all as is, and they look like they're all foreclosures. But
you can get non-jacked up properties.
Where do you find these? I'm on the USDA site, but I don't know if I'm looking at the right thing. This looks like totally.
Those I think are the properties that they're selling specifically, because there's some that are like. I think that's maybe a different part of that program to where it's direct. So if you're like can't afford and you're struggling, they'll help you. But any home, if you look in the map in the zip code, if the home falls in that area, you can go and apply for the financing as USDA. So you can buy a mansion out in farm country. Yeah, it doesn't have to
determine eligibility.
Yeah. And so
it has to be an eligible rural area. Yes. It's not that you have to buy a house through them. It's just a house that meets whatever they're freaking.
Thank you. That's the term, rural. It has to be in a rural area.
Yes.
That's the biggest determining factor, because your credit can be pretty low. And
640, yeah, it's like not high at all.
The income requirements to be able to pay the mortgage, they're basically act as a lender. You go get the loan through the USDA.
They subsidize it essentially.
Yes.
They're saying, like if this person defaults, we're backing this
loan.
They'll
cover it. So like a regular third party ends up getting the loan, but just like a VA loan, like the USDA is ensuring like, hey, we'll cover the full price of this if the person doesn't pay.
97% of the land in the U.S. is eligible for a mortgage backed by USDA.
So I was way off. I said 90s, 97%. So, hey, dive in deep. People go on the website if you're interested. And they,
Dude.
from my understanding, Congress each year like will allocate what their budget is for the year for the USDA to do this program.
Yeah.
And they'll approve everyone who's qualified. But like once all the funds are allocated towards loans, that's it for the year. And you got to wait till the next fiscal year to be able to do it. So we just started the new fiscal year. So now's the time. People are interested in USDA, like jump on it.
Dude, this is slick as shit, dude. I've never even heard of this. That's awesome. I'm definitely going to do more research on this.
Oh, good.
Well, okay. So we've got wraparound, which I understand,
and seller financing.
Slightly limited, but what was the other one?
Seller financing.
Seller financing.
And you as the buyer can approach people and just ask them. Like, there's no lenders involved in this. This is just two individuals working out like a legal contract. And
so is that like if I wanted to I want to buy your house, but I'm like, hey, I'm just going to pay you X amount of dollars per month, or how would that work?
Yeah, similar. You can call properties that are listed for sale, and you could just ask, like, hey, if you have access to the MLS, sometimes in the MLS, it will say, like, it usually says what type of loan is okay for the property, like conventional, FHA, VA. Sometimes they say seller financing. So that means the person is already open to that. So if you have an agent, like you can tell an agent those are the only properties they're interested in, they can search for that for you. And then it's basically like the seller will have their terms of usually what they're willing to, like how much they want down and what the rate's going to be and how much they want each month for the payment. And then you just negotiate. If you like it, you buy it. If you don't, you walk away.
Interesting. So you can pay it in chunks. Or you can just say, hey, I'm going to pay you X amount of dollars towards like a lease to own situation almost.
Yep. Very similar.
Dude, so that same kid that I knew who did the scheme with the AC, his dad owned a bunch of properties and he would do, and this was actually shady. I think it's probably legal, but it's just ethically not the greatest. He would he would rent properties out as lease to own. So he would essentially do this seller financing. But what ends up happening there is, which is I think smart and shady at the same time.
They miss a payment and you kick them out, start over again.
And and the entire time they're there, they're responsible for the upkeep of the home.
Yes.
So these people I'm assuming there's probably a handful of folks that actually like kept paying him, which is good, right? And then maybe they assume ownership after whatever terms. But the people that then eventually default, it's like they lose the money towards the house. He never had to pay for maintenance. I mean,
it's like having renters.
I definitely, when he told me that, thought it was smart, but like super unethical.
It's like renting, except for they take better care of the property. Plus, they usually pay you a down payment, a big chunk of money up front. So
I don't know.
And in that
I would only do that if it was me.
Oh, go ahead.
Like I would only do that if I knew I was trying to be like on the up and up about it. Like I wouldn't just try to do it and like be like, I hope they default.
Well,
like I would want them to like win.
A lot of people who hope they default, and that's why they make those. I mean, hey, I'm willing to do this for you, but you got to keep your end of the deal. I hope you don't, because then I get the house back and keep all your money. And I feel like, and again, there's risk reward to each thing, right? This stuff you got to be cautious of if you're going to do these deals. And I know there's definitely predatory people who do those types of situations, especially in Arizona. There would be a lot that were, the ads are listed in Spanish and that sort of thing. And they're targeting people who are maybe like illegal in the country, so they can't qualify to buy, but this is a way for them to be able to own a home. And they'll take advantage. And as soon as they miss a payment or are late on a payment, they're like, see you later, kick them right out. And then just turn around and list the property and do the same thing again. And it's like a rental, except the difference is you're getting them to usually pay like $10,000 to $20,000 payment up front.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Oh my God.
So,
oh man, there's like this part of me that is like, I love the dark side of the Force in Star Wars, and I've always like, but like I think deep down I'm like good. I'm like Darth Vader, where like he's actually like secretly good, and he's got like a soft little heart. But like that sounds like an awesome way to make money. It just I could never do that because I would feel like such a piece of crap.
Yeah, I would be the same way. Like I feel like that's legal technically to do, but you start getting like unethical behavior, that sort of thing.
Like people who do that wind up getting murdered. Or if they don't, they just have really bad things happen in their lives.
And a lot of people give like real estate owners who are landlords and things like bad names. Don't get me wrong. Just like any job or any industry, there's people in there who are bad apples who do bad things and treat people like shit. There's a lot of people who are like out there to be good and provide housing for people that otherwise it wouldn't be available, because if regular people weren't out there, investors providing this housing, the government ain't providing it. That's why the tax laws are written the way they are, to give so many tax breaks for like real estate and things like that, because that's what they're trying to encourage investors to do, is to provide enough housing for people, especially in cities and things. So if you look at areas where the laws all of a sudden went against that, like during COVID when renters didn't have to make their payments for 2 months, but yet if you had a mortgage on that and you were the investor, you still had to pay the bank the mortgage payments. Guess what? If you enact those laws, like I think San Francisco did something where it's like, you don't have to pay for 2 years if you can show you lost your job for COVID, but they won't kick you out of the house. Like, why would investors want to continue to own investment properties in those areas to where they're going to put themselves at huge financial risks for their own ability, where they could be like bankrupt and lose everything? They're not. They're going to sell their properties.
I would dump that property as soon as I could and then move on to another city. And
that's what causes areas to basically like collapse and go away. So I get it, right? Like I've been in places where the landlords, they raise the rent a lot the next year, and hey, you just can't pay it and you go find somewhere else to live, and it sucks. I get it. But like at the same time, a lot of the people are good and they're providing a service that's needed, and most of them are not making like crazy profits. And I get the example.
Yeah, it's like hundreds of dollars.
Yeah,
if that, per month.
And I give the example of like the Alabama property. Yeah, that's a big return on investment, right? But at the same time, like that's what the going rents are in that area. And because we put 25% down, our payment is low. So it's things like that to where it's like the tenant is completely happy. They have a nice, new, renovated inside, beautiful house. It's a short commute, like 12 minutes for them to get to work every day. And we're winning because we're lucky. We have a really good tenant that takes care of the property and pays on time each month. So that's the way to look at it, as like a win-win-win situation for everyone, right? Like everyone's getting something.
You always want to create that win-win-win. I like that.
Yeah.
And so is the last one the Burr? That's one I've been most excited about.
Yeah, so I want to go over Burr, flip, and wholesale, because these are three things you can do as an investor with little to no money. And the Burr is the craziest. So the percentages you want to try to shoot for these, the percentage of the property will tell you which category you should have the property under. So to give you an idea, you want to have whatever these are fixer properties. Like this is not a new build or something like that you're buying that's going to fall in this category. These are properties that are need work, need fixing up, and by putting work and fixing them up, it will increase the value of the home. That's the key here. There has to be room to increase the value. So with a Burr stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and then repeat. So the first thing you would do is find like a property that's in distress. You would buy the property. Usually these properties are not going to qualify for conventional lending. Like you're probably going to need a hard money loan or buy cash. So you buy the property and then you got to fix it up, renovate it out. Then you put a renter in there. And then once a renter's in there paying rent, now you can go to a lender or a bank and get a mortgage put on the property. And I'll tell you why this is so important and key, because you get to keep using the same money over and over and over again. You don't have to keep saving up to keep buying property. So let's say you have a property that's worth like $100,000 in its current state. And if you fix it up, it'll be worth $200,000. And you tour the property, look at it, you can have a contractor there with you who's going to do the repairs if you're not, able to kind of figure this stuff out yourself. And let's say the contractor's like, hey, 30 grand of work in this place will be like good as new. So then okay, property costs 100 grand. I'm going to need 30,000 for repairs. And then what's the difference between the 130 and the 200? Like you estimate that's what the after repair value will be, the ARV. Like a bank is going to come in there, tour the property when it's all fixed up, and say for the appraisal, oh yeah, this property, if it's sold on the market, would be worth 200,000. That's the key, is getting that getting really close or accurate on what you think the value will be after it's fixed up, because this is key when you go to the bank to get a mortgage put on it. Because let's say you bought it cash, right? So you're $130,000 cash out of your pocket. You go to the bank. The bank is going to say it's worth $200,000, right? Most banks will only give you a loan for 70% of the full value of the property. Some of them will do 75%, right? So that's their way of making you like have a down payment or equity, right? So what would 70% be? Would be what, 60,000 out of 200? So they'll let you put a loan for up to $140,000 on that property that's worth 240, right? So here's the key. So you go to the bank, you fill out the paperwork, get the mortgage put. Well, now they just gave you $140,000, right? Because that's your mortgage. Well, you put $130,000 of your own money into it, and you got an extra $10,000 back. Now you have $140,000 to go do that with another property. And the key is by determining what the rents are in the area and what your mortgage would be at that. Let's say your mortgage on $140,000 is like, I don't know, it wouldn't be that high, maybe like $700-800. I mean, obviously with the rates now it'd be insane, but then you go and rent the property for, let's say, $1,000, right? So if your all-in cost with property tax and everything was $800 and you're renting it for $1,000, well, now you're profiting $200. So not only did you literally just get a free house because you got all your money back out of it, actually you got paid $10,000 to have that house because you pulled 140 of your 130 you put in. But now you have a rental property and there's a renter in there who's covering the mortgage and you're making $200 profit each month. Do you see now?
How do you get into the first house if you don't have $100,000?
You do hard money.
Can you get into a burr on like a
Yep.
like buy a piece of shit or buy a fixer upper with like a very inexpensive mortgage?
So you probably could, but the easiest way is a hard money loan. So hard money loan is interest only payments. You're basically going to an individual or like hard money lender, and they're saying like, oh, the house is $100,000, okay. Oh, and I'll also cover repair value for you, so that's $30,000. Okay, so you want a loan for $130,000 cash. They go and like have someone appraise the property themselves, like do their due diligence to see if they think that $200,000 value is there. Because if you screw up, they get the property, and they'll just do the same thing that you were going to do, or just turn around and sell it to a flipper. So here's the key. So burrs, you want roughly, if you take the value that the property will be after and what you can get the property for, and say the property is worth like, you need to have a 30% spread basically, if that makes sense, of like profit that's available in there. And that's ideal for a burr, 30% or more. With a flip, you want at least 20%, meaning like the amount of money it would take you to fix the property up to get you the value you want after. Once it's fixed up and the new value, your profit should be at least 20% that you make on that deal from that effort. There's
a flip is cool to get into with just a standard mortgage, right?
Usually when you do a flip, same thing. You got to be a cash or hard money loan to buy.
Why is that?
Because a regular lender is usually not going to lend on a house that's jacked up, and they're not going to take the risk of a flipper because a lot of people like do a shitty job or they don't finish or the market changes.
How would they know you're going to flip?
Well, no one's going to. Usually the house are in such disrepair, like no lender would loan on it. It's not.
So these are in both situations are
properties.
Homes that would essentially, they're not unlivable, but they're like a bank would be like, I'm not willing to take
like
a risk
hoarder
on this.
house, like crap everywhere to the ceiling, holes in the floor to where like if you step there you like fall in, or like
how do you know
toilets missing? I mean.
How do you know if it's like
some of these videos of these
too messed up beyond? Dude, we just binge watched this show, like it was called like Flipper's Hoarder House.
Oh, okay.
Awesome.
Yeah, you'll see.
But I'm always like, how do you know? Like, where's the line? Like, how do I know they didn't dump a bunch of like liquid or like quick dry cement in the toilets? Especially because a lot of those you got to buy like sight unseen or whatever.
Can
you go into these houses and poke around and like make sure they're not totally jacked up? Like where it's like bad.
So the most ideal situation is like Sabrina, through cold calling and door knocking, she found a property in Arizona. That was one of our properties that we bought initially. It was going to be a burr, but then we were having some trouble renting it, so we basically just turned it into a flip and ended up selling it. That's a good thing about a burr. If your numbers get off, maybe maybe the cost to like renovate go higher. Like that's what our cost ended up being higher than what we estimated, which partially me because I was like, we should put these little nicer finishes in here, that sort of thing. But if you're already at a 30% profit margin and you go over, oh, the tears, now you're at 20%. Oh my God, like, poor me, I'm only going to make like 20% profit. You know what I mean? You're just like, oh, my hair is still good. The problem is,
so you pay back the mobster you borrowed the money from so they don't break your fingers.
Yeah.
And then you just go, you have profit, and then you can do it again, essentially.
Yeah. So
who hard money lends people?
You can find regular people.
How do they make money?
So this is when you do the loan, you pay a percentage. It's usually higher than what a normal, let's say mortgage rates are like 5%, which is high. When mortgage rates were 3 or 4% before all these recent hikes, to do a hard money loan was usually 10% interest, and it's interest only loan. You're not paying down, and they're usually shorter, 6 months to like 2 years. And then the key is you have to pay a premium that they call points when you get the loan, and it's usually 1% of the value of the loan. So if you're
they make a little bit of money, and then the collateral is if you default, I own this asset.
So the key is like if you're a hard money loan lender, you're basically sending your money out for investment. You're getting a 10% return on your money you lended out. That's a good
because I'm gonna get my 1% up front, and then
they have to pay you
back in a couple months, but I'll have made enough interest off of it in that small amount of time.
Yeah, because you have to make payments each month at that 10% or 12% or whatever.
Is that what they call like carrying costs essentially?
Yes.
That's okay.
So you're basically making like mortgage payments, but you're paying to them. So to give you an idea, I'll give you a real world example, the one that we did. So Sabrina Dornox found the gal. It was the second property that she owned. She had moved out like years before and moved into a newer home, and her and her husband were getting ready to retire. And like her nephew or something was renting the old house, and they had trashed it. Well, the house paid off. She's owned it for like over 30 years. She didn't have a loan on it. And she was like, oh, actually, yeah, that you came by, like, I'm getting ready to retire, so it would be nice to basically just like sell this property. But the property is in condition that like if you sold it on the market, no regular person's going to buy it. Only like flippers.
It just wouldn't sell, or they'd have to put money into it.
And then you got to pay realtor fees, that sort of thing. So they basically, the lady was interested. So you do your due diligence on the property before, like seeing what the rates are in the area, if it's fixed up, what homes are selling for. And then you go down what you think it'll cost. I mean, then she went in person and walked the property and tried to like get an estimate of, what their repair value or the repair cost would be. So with that, I think we estimated like 30,000 in repairs.
Damn, and how fucked up was that house?
Not like crazy, but it's from the 50s, so it had like a lot of wear
outdated
and tear. And
what's the conversation like? Hey, I'm looking to buy a house. Do you have anything? No. Okay. Hey, you looking to buy a house?
Are you interested in selling your property? Have you ever thought about selling?
Oh, she knew.
Have you ever thought about?
She would target specific houses.
Yeah, you look for.
So I knock on your door and I go, hey, are you looking to sell this house?
Yeah, you don't knock on nice houses. You knock on houses that look like a little tore up on the outside, like certain things you'll look for. But then you also go and run because it's public record of the property records. And you go and look up when the person bought the home, how much they owe on it, the loans, everything. And then you start sorting by certain categories of like, they should own the home more than 10 years, right? Like, or you can search for someone paid off, or all these different factors. And that's how you compile your list. That's part of deciding what you're looking for. So you target people who have a higher percentage of probably wanting to sell the property. And you call them, and you get told no.
They paid it off already.
Yeah.
They're probably older. Yep. Okay.
And you get told no 100 times, but like, so I'll finish with the deal, and then you let me know if you think it's worth being told no, like hundreds of times to get one yes. So she went and talked to her. They worked out and negotiated on the property, and she agreed to sell for like $218,000. And we estimated the after repair value of the home to be like $375,000 or $400,000, and that we probably needed to put $30,000 in repairs in it. And we were like, to sweeten the deal, we'll pay all the closing costs for you also. And there's no realtor fees because it's off market. And the lady was like super stoked. Yeah, like totally. And it wasn't taking advantage. Like if she were to sell that on the market in the shape it was in, she probably would have got like not much more than that. But then you got to have the listing and people walking the property and all this stuff. And it like reeked like dog piss in there.
So
and
instead,
like,
she just got the money like right away, one lump sum.
yep.
Yeah.
And guess what? You don't have to wait and worry about people canceling because of having an inspection and not liking it or financing falling through. Like we'll pay. You're going to get cash in 10 days. You're going to get a check in 10 days for $218,000. She's like, hell yeah. Like, I'm ready. I'll take that retirement deal.
Yeah, that's what's up.
So, then we went to our money loan and we were like, with her closing costs, everything was like 220 and we're like 30,000 in repair estimates. So 250 is the amount that we took for hard money loan. And, we found it was a pretty sweet person that we used that, their rate is 6% and they don't charge points.
That's cool.
So it's kind of like, the financial advisors that we use, is like a side that they do as part of their investing is, through real estate. So we did that and it was for, I think it was going to be a year time just to be safe, but our plan was 6 months because you have to have a property under title. You have to be closed on a property for 6 months before a lender is even willing to like look at putting a loan on it for you. So we already knew ahead of time, like, yeah, we're gonna have carrying costs for 6 months. And I think our payments were like $1,100 a month that we were making to like pay the interest only on the loan.
So you definitely need, even if you do get this hard money loan, you definitely do need to have a
little bit of cash. Yeah, like in our situation, we didn't have to pay a point, but if you had to pay a 1% point, what would that have been on 250? It would have been $2,500.
Was it like $2,500? Yeah.
Like if you can't scrape $2,500 together to invest in real estate,
it's more that like it's that, and then it's like the monthly carrying costs. So I mean, if you have like a
that's true
that pays okay,
you won't be able to like get someone in there until it's done, right? Like ideally, you want to get it fixed up in like 2 months, maybe 3 months. So you're only having to pay that for 3 months, and by then you have a renter in there, and the renter's paying those fees. Yeah. So the faster you get the property ready to rent, the faster you get a renter in there, and then they're paying.
How do you pay the borough or the hard money lender then if you rent it?
So this is the key. Okay, so
that's when you get the mortgage, and then
at 6 months is when you go to the lender and you show like we estimated that we'd be able to rent it for like $1,800 a month because of the 3-bedroom, 1-bath in that area.
Yeah.
So we're like, all right, if we get the after repair value of this, we can rent for this. Our mortgage will roughly be like $1,200. So after paying a property manager, we'll be netting like $300 a month, and we'll get all our money back. Well, we'll pay the hard money. We didn't really put any of our money into it, right? So it was the same scenario before, but so we closed on the property and then we start doing like things on it. And then it needs a lot of new electrical. It needs a lot of new plumbing. Like these things are old and busted and need some roof works, and then rip up the floor and those foundations like got some cracks and things need to be repaired. So over time, like bits here and there where it's just like, oh, that's a couple $1,000 to fix that, or a couple $1,000 to fix this. Before you know it, we were like 60,000 was our value that we paid. So, and we saved where we could. Like, I did demo. I demoed out the whole kitchen, removed a wall that we took out, and then
demo's fun, man. Yeah, that's awesome.
And then,
and by the way, I'm now realizing you don't actually have these carry costs if you can get it fixed up quickly and get a renter in. Then you're just paying the hard lender out of the
renter's rent that they're paying.
Yeah. Okay.
So like, let's say it takes you 3 months. That's $3,300 roughly that you're paying in interest total, and then the $2,500 that you had on the loan. So just under $6,000. Which that can be a lot for people that come up with $6,000. But at the same time, is $6,000 expensive, or going to put 25% down to put a loan on a regular house?
Yeah.
We're talking like 50, 100,000 or more right there, right? So $6,000 sounds like that's pretty low barrier to entry. So then, it ended up being like 60,000, and it took a little longer than initially thought. The first contractor we had was like a recommendation from property manager we had, and they were complete hot garbage. Never showed up on time, couldn't finish jobs. And we found like the tile guy that we had used, or the plumber that we were using. He was like, oh, I actually do a lot of work for this guy that does a lot of tile work. He's really good. So we had him come in and give us a bid and did amazing tile work. And then he's like, oh yeah, I'm like a contractor. I can do any type of work. So then we started giving him jobs piece at a time. He started doing amazing each job. So eventually we just fired the other guy and gave this dude the whole house. And he was like, if you would have given me this house from the start, he's like, I would have been done in 2 weeks.
Oh,
But instead it took like
lesson
2.5,
learned,
3 months. Yeah, and that's part of the process, right? If you learn, like you can try to do your due diligence and screen people as much as you can, but like you don't really know until they do the work.
What's good there too is that, you know, especially if you're trying to develop this process in a geographic area, now you just identified your go-to team
Correct.
member.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
So once they've proven themselves, then you're like, all right, I got a solid team here of my contractor, real estate agent, a lender, and you can keep repeating the process. So we did that.
So what'd you guys wind up selling the house for?
So we tried to rent it, and we were getting a lot of traffic through, and people would come by all the time when we were working on repairs and be like, hey, are you going to rent this house? Like, when is it? So the area that I was in is like a heavily Hispanic area. It's very close to the downtown in Chandler, which is good walking distance, like a lot of value.
Yeah.
But a lot of the families that live in there and the people that are interested to rent were like illegal immigrants, right? So as far as then like renting to them liabilities and things like that, it just...
Because then you're trying to pull money out and there it's like, who are these people that are living there?
Yeah, it just, I don't know. We did some due diligence, tried to check, but we're just like, didn't feel comfortable as far as like liability and things that could run into that.
Sure.
So anyway, the house sat for a couple months without being able to get someone to rent. And then, we had moved and decided to start like going through divorce for other reasons. And we ended up just deciding to list the property. So we were able to list it. I think we listed it at 360 because the market had kind of shifted a little bit at that time, ended up selling for right around there, like 350. So all in, we were like 280 because the repair costs went up, and we sold it for 360. And then, since Sabrina is an agent, and you don't have to pay any fees to yourself.
Wait, so how long did you start to finish of the process from the first?
It ended up being 6 months because we were
from the door knock to the sale. 6 months.
Yeah, because we were initially planning on doing the loan on there. So we kept like trying to get renters, and as the time got closer, and then we'll finally just like, F it, okay, we got to sell it. So, So even with the like trials, tribulations, the freaking foundations rotting, whatever, that's 6 months. I mean, so because of all of...
you do that twice in a year, that's 120, no, was it 80 grand? 160 grand, dude. That's top 5% income right there.
$80,000 after all said and done, and we paid off the hard money loan. And that was with the carrying costs and everything like calculated into it. Now, if you hold with flipping, if it's under 12 months that you hold the house, you do have to pay capital, like higher capital gains. I think it's 30%.
Wait, if you hold it longer, you pay more?
If you hold it less than 12 months. Yeah.
So in our situation, like anything that's a short-term
yes.
hold is okay. Because there's short-term cap gains, long-term cap gains.
You pay higher.
So it's like the same as stocks, I guess, then.
Correct. And crypto, they're putting it under that as well, too.
Speaking of crypto, dude, check this shit out.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Is that a miner?
Where is it? Where is this thing? It's there. The Ledger, the Nano S Ledger.
Oh, nice. Oh, in the box. Yeah, sweet.
Yeah. Hey, friends, are you interested in protecting your crypto? Just kidding, we're not sponsored by them, but that would be super cool. But yeah, I bought it finally, per your recommendation. I got to get the frickin' steal and like smash my frickin'. I don't even know what my code is and stuff. I might need to hit you up because I'm sure I could figure it out. But I'm too intimidated to even open it.
When you install, it'll walk you through all that stuff, and then your keyframes.
We're at the an hour.
Talk about that off the podcast.
You're right. Yeah, we're gonna do a podcast where we set this up with my code on it.
Okay, but neither of us own any crypto whatsoever, so this is just hypothetical talking here.
Yeah, if I owned crypto, I would need this. I'm just interested in the technology. We're at an hour and 13 here. Any final words, or do you want to go over any of the other ones briefly?
I mean, flipping is pretty self-explanatory. I would just say wholesaling real quick is the other one. You want about a 10% minimum buffer because wholesaling is the same thing. What we did with the Burr is where you're cold calling people. That's why, you probably get calls from people if you own a property like, hey, you want to sell your property? That's what they're trying to do. Wholesaling is you basically get the property under contract, but you change the verbiage in the property to basically like you add 2 words. I forget what it is. It's like I'm going to purchase, or I can like assign it to someone else is basically the verbiage.
So your goal there is to just find enough people who are interested in letting you flip their house to another person, and you take a sensual finder's
correct,
fee.
Exactly. Except for nine times out of 10, that person has no idea that there's that you're doing that. I mean, you could tell them.
Oh, you just operate as a pass-through entity.
Yeah, so you're basically
you're buying it from them.
Yeah,
as far as they're concerned.
Me and my investment partners are interested in buying. Like, you lock up the contract, and then, who's the name of this other person? Oh, that's my investment partner, my business partner.
Is it better to line up the wholesale property or the buyer first?
Oh, you don't have to worry about buyers. Buyers are everywhere. If you got a good deal on a property, you find a buyer easily. You can find buyers on bigger pockets. Oh, are you kidding me? You post a deal you got on bigger pockets. Oh, people come out of the woodwork in a second. Everyone knows someone looking to buy. Like, that was never a problem for us. We always had people calling us on, like, hey, you got anything?
It's finding the deal
is the hardest
to flip
part.
is what is the hard part. Okay.
So let's say the house is worth same thing, right? Like an opportunity. These houses don't have to be as in bad a shape. It could be something that's very light work that needs to be done to get it rent ready, because most of the investors who want to buy are going to rent it, or they could be a flipper, right? There has to be enough meat on the bone for the buyer for them to be interested in the deal. So let's say the house, you lock the house up for $120,000 and it needs $20,000 in repairs. So you're like, all right, locked up for $120,000. Let's say I sell it for $140,000 to a flipper. Flipper's going to put $20,000 to $160,000. And they can sell it for $200,000, so they're going to make a $40,000 profit.
So you're doing all these tabulations, doing the comps,
yes,
and figuring out
exactly,
is there enough pillow in here for a prospective buyer and for me?
And then you'll have no problem someone buying it, because the person's like, you just give me a property, and and obviously they'll do their due diligence to make sure your numbers add up. But if you're a flipper and someone's just bringing you houses all day and you're just making like $50,000 a pop or whatever doing them, would you be upset? You'd be like,
that sounds like the best thing right there, dude.
And
I can door knock and make calls all day.
They don't know the price you lock the property up for. They just see the price that they're paying. And then they might
not even care, honestly.
Yeah, when it closes,
that's so much work on that front end.
When it closes for title. And usually, I mean, you could tell the sellers, but usually just get upset, like, oh, you're ripping me off or whatever. And it's like, not really. This is the price you agreed to sell. Like, no one's going to buy this property. So anyway, you would basically, in that scenario, make like 20 G's in 10 days for basically just locking that person up in contract and assigning the contract to the other person. Your name never goes on title, anything. You're not involved at all. Title just cuts you a check for 20 G's when it closes.
Dude, I want that. I want to try that.
There are some people who make a lot, like the investor group that Sabrina's part of. There's been some people who made like $200,000 assignment fee on a wholesale.
Holy shit!
Like,
it's just called wholesale.
Yeah, wholesaling. So
I'm writing this on a.
In closing, I guess my thing would say any of the topics we covered today, we just did like very, very light.
It says wholesale,
and I know this one was very information packed and maybe not as jokes and things like that, but yeah, just dive deep if you're interested in any of these specifics. Like, we just kind of did like an easy overview to give you an idea of what other kind of options are out there and available. Whether you only have maybe $5,000 to try to work with to get involved or whatnot, you can get started anywhere. So don't feel like you have to have 100 properties to be able to retire. No way. If you start when you're young, especially too, and the properties are paid off in 30 years, say you're 50, 60 when you're going to retire. If you have 4 properties and they're each pulling like $1,500 or $2,000 a month, once the mortgages are paid off, you can't live on $8,000 a month, like with no bills, and you pay off your own property.
My dad had. Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I'm all done. Sorry,
doing that a lot this time.
Keep talking.
No, that's the fun part about a podcast, right? My dad, he's in his late 70s now, and he is a guy who worked his whole life. He grew up on a farm. He's an executive job, but he's got a good work ethic. Still works, whatever. But he had 4 investment properties, just liquidated them. But he got in using kind of one of these government programs. They used to do these HUD loans. It's like a 50% match. You wind up getting it's like Section 8 renters, so it can be dicey in terms of how well they take care of the home. Some were good, a lot were bad. Anyway, though, probably spent a total of $60,000 on these 4 properties, and then I think I mentioned this in another podcast, but sold them all at the peak of the market, and I don't know a number, but I mean, probably it was like, seven figures off of 60 grand, which had essentially been generating cash flow for the last 20, 30 years. So not only is it a really great vehicle for passive income and to even retire on to not have to work, but if you're also working, more money to support your lifestyle, to create more investment opportunities. And then when you're ready to cash out, you've been protecting, let's say, $2 million. And that's, not like an insane amount of money, but like that plus your 401k and whatever other investments you have is plenty of money to live on for, zero to death.
Of course. And you bring up a great point. At any time, especially when they're paid off or at any point in life, like that's an option that's available to you to cash that out if you need to and invest in something
market
else.
Gets hot, you're like, let's go.
And that's usually what a lot will do, right? They're like, hey, I'm going to sell a couple of these because, I'm going to take those earnings, that profit. And then when the downturn comes, I have this cash to invest again at even lower prices and get in there.
And you actually don't, and you correct me if I'm wrong here, you don't have to pay unless you actually liquidate into a different investment vehicle. So if I flip and I roll it into another house, I don't have to pay taxes, do I?
So you can do the, I forget what they call it, like a 403B exchange or something like that. You're basically like delaying. Yeah,
it protects it for like a year or something.
The taxes you have to pay, like kicking the can down the road. But there's talk of them trying to eliminate that credit tax loop.
Because that's a pretty sweet loophole, if I'm saying that correctly.
Well, and from my understanding, if you structure it correctly, like you can keep kicking the can down the road until you die. And then if you structure that correctly, like they can't come after like your kids or anything like that, or whoever you pass the houses on to collect.
What if you live forever? That's my plan.
Hey, you could do that too. So
well, cool. Yeah, we're at hour 20. I was trying to think of like the one or two that I like the most, but honestly, the one that sounded the sexiest to me was the wholesale, because it's just like a bunch of like grinding it out and then like doing some like arbitrage.
Especially get background sales, cool. You could be crushing that and just be like, yeah, I made 100K this week. Like,
dude, like, yeah, that honestly, if you're willing to put in the like little bit of like uncomfort and grit, is probably in terms of barrier to entry, lowest, right? That USDA is sick. I want to see what's up with that, because I wouldn't mind living off the beaten trail. I mean, if it's like you need to live in this cave in this like 2 hours from a grocery store, maybe not. But if it was like, okay, you live 30 minutes from town, like cool, I'll live next to a farm. I like cows, and I like the show Yellowstone. So that sounds like a win-win. The burr flip thing, super cool, because
if you can get burrs,
God forbid it doesn't work out and you make a big old profit. But the burrs seems like the ones that people get like a turbo boner on.
Yes.
Especially on bigger pockets, because that's got to be...
If you do it correct, you basically get a free house and you have the money to keep going.
You just keep getting new houses, and then you just build a freaking army of rental properties.
Yes.
And a lot of these experts, just to give some background on the bigger pockets people, they are... What the ultimate way for an expert to monetize their knowledge is to create infotainment. So most of these people are people that have done this professionally, but then they want to go to the next level, so they create like video courses and mentorship programs and all this shit with their knowledge that they've earned through doing. So they're incentivized to give away a lot of this information for free to draw attention to themselves, so that they can then, it's like a free upsell, let's call it. You don't need to pay for it, but I know that you'd worked with a coach. I work with a lot of coaches when I'm looking to like develop a new skill. I think it's a great way to cut the line. So either way, you can do it for free, or you can pay for someone to like hold your hand. I think either option is super valuable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. We missed dad joke time. Do you have a dad joke you want to?
Yeah. No, let's do. Oh, I love this. All right.
Here, I got one ready. If you're not, I can go first.
Yeah, you go first.
Okay. Why couldn't the steam engine sit down?
Why?
Because he had a tender behind.
A tender behind?
Because like a tender is like the car that they tow behind the engine.
That was deep in the train weeds. Oh, I didn't even have one ready. I'm Googling dad jokes on Reddit right now. Okay. If you're in need of a job, you could try search and rescue. They're always looking for people.
I like that one.
Oh, this is one that Abby told me the other day. She was like, she goes, why are fat people so gullible? And I was like, what? And she goes, yeah, they just eat everything up.
Oh my gosh.
I enjoyed that one very much. As you could tell by my laughter.
All right. Well, we appreciate everyone listening. As always, please leave a comment down below if there's a certain topic you want us to dive deeper into, whether it's real estate or anything. Let us know as well, and we will read comments and answer questions in the following shows as well too. So, and we'll try to make the next one not so information heavy, but I feel like this is some good important stuff for people.
Good info.
So,
I agree.
any final words, Joe?
That's it. This is a good one. Live long and prosper. Wait, where's my thing?
All right. See y'all. Have a good one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
But end meeting. Wait, nope. Stop.